let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin, right? And let's talk about a potential supply shock into the halving. That's really what I wanted to start off by talking about. But there's a reason why I highlighted this little dog coin here on the moon. The dog coin on the moon. I mean, these memes have just been taking off over the last couple of weeks, not just on Solana, but on Base, on Avalanche, and hopefully we'll see some memes on Polygon soon. But what is the potential Bitcoin supply shock? And why is that so important to us? Well, these ETFs, these Bitcoin ETFs, and I keep coming back to this same line of thinking, this same narrative week on week, because it's so critically important. That's why. These ETFs play such a crucial role in the market now. And as we're getting closer to the halving event, we really need to be honing in on these net flows for these spot Bitcoin ETFs. And so what I was talking about last week, as we had a little bit of a correction over the last two and a half weeks now, I was looking at net flows and they had turned negative. And so what we were talking about last week was outflows from GBTC and how that was being absorbed by BlackRock, their ETF, IBIT, and by Fidelity's ETF. But that has recovered this week, and we're seeing inflows again. So net flows have moved back above the zero bound and up towards 500 million again. You can see that highlighted right here. But what I really want to talk about, though, is not necessarily just about net flows. I also want to talk about a potential supply squeeze. So think about it this way. This is really simple supply and demand right here with this Bitcoin ETF and what it's done to demand, the demand side. There is significantly more demand for spot Bitcoin than exists for sale. And so we're seeing these massive outflows from GBTC because they're really the only supplier at the margin. The miners produce 900 BTC per day. And up until recently, there was a guy, it might be one individual, it might be an entity, who was buying one wallet address, buying all 900 every single day for weeks. And they've built a multi-billion-dollar position in Bitcoin. So if we've got one entity buying all of the supply from miners, but then there's also demand from all of these ETFs, the demand is outpacing the supply significantly so. And so what I think might happen going into the halving event is something similar to what we saw going into the ETF launch, where there's this speculation that the halving event is going to cut supply even further. Well, that's not speculation, that's a fact. But what it could do to price is have this effect of moving Bitcoin significantly higher and faster than most people think. That's what I'm thinking about anyway. I'm thinking that maybe the demand outpaces supply by so much that going into the end of April halving event, we see Bitcoin just take off like a rocket ship. So that's what I'm thinking about. And I keep bringing it back to flows. And so as soon as we see GBTC just slow down on its selling a little bit, I think we're going to see Bitcoin just take off like a rocket ship. And where is all of that Bitcoin from GBTC flowing to? Well, there's a couple of entities that have never slowed down their purchases. BlackRock with their IBIT ETF, this is showing no signs of slowing down. Up above 15 billion in assets under management. This is on-chain holdings right now. So that ETF from BlackRock is performing exceptionally well. Pretty sure that's the best launch of an ETF in history. And what has it done to price? Well, we've seen BTC move from roughly 40K to 73K at its peak a couple of weeks ago. And the important level that I'm watching is this 69K level, which you can see right here. That's the old all-time high. As long as we can remain above that old all-time high, we have a shot at invalidating that false breakout from a couple weeks ago and then bouncing off of this 69K level and moving higher. So that's what I have my eyes on. But I'm also watching Bitcoin dominance. This is so important to signal the start of alt season. I continue to think that Bitcoin, with a move higher into the halving event, could outperform all altcoins. And so that would mean that Bitcoin dominance would increase. My target is right around 57.5%. I think that it could move a touch higher. Now, what signals the start of alt season? The start of alt season is signaled by Bitcoin dominance moving lower in a big way, something similar to what happened in Q2, the end of Q2 2021. So if we see something like this, where Bitcoin dominance moves lower in a big way and fast, that signals the start of alt season. That would signal relative altcoin outperformance against Bitcoin. Now, there are a couple of narratives that I am closely watching here, and I want to position myself in these altcoins prior to any breakdown in Bitcoin dominance. Because if you wait until Bitcoin dominance breaks down, well, then you may miss most of the move, and I don't want to miss the moves. So 3 narratives to watch. Number 1, GameFi. GameFi is this is such a big narrative in Web3 and in DeFi. It sits at the convergence point of DeFi and Web3. And these games print money. They make so much money from selling skins. And what you're starting to see, there was a movie that I saw recently where players loaded into a virtual world with their loadouts. And if that player died in the virtual world, if they were killed in the virtual world, their loadouts could be claimed by another player. And so we're seeing that type of game economics happen in Web3 now, where you pay for your skins, you pay for your custom loadouts, and then if you lose them because you die in game, someone else can grab them and then sell them on the open market because they have value. So these Web3 and these Web3 games, they print a ton of money. So I definitely want to be following GameFi. This is a $150 billion a year industry. It is massive. So definitely looking for Naka, like I mentioned in today's report. IMX is another big one. There's a couple of really interesting first-person shooters that have their own tokens now. Shrapnel comes to mind. There's another one, Out of the Wild, I think it's called, or Into the Wild. But these are big games, and they look amazingly good. That's the first narrative. I'm following GameFi. I think that there are some 50 or 100Xers in there. I'm also following AI. This is extremely important. And there's really a handful of assets that I'm following most closely. Right now, it's Fetch. Fetch with its AI agents platform, extremely valuable. And if they end up merging with, I think it's Ajax and another one, that could create a
Ocean.
powerhouse. Ocean, yeah, thank you, Colin. So not just Fetch, Render, decentralized GPU compute, Tau, SingularityNet is actually different than Tau. I think that's Ajax, and Near Protocol. And so today we're going to talk about Near Protocol. I found a nice pool that will allow us to gain some exposure to Near. I've been looking for that for quite a while. So Web3 AI projects, another big narrative to watch. And all of these assets there are quality pools that contain these assets. Fetch BNB over on the BNB chain, that's on PancakeSwap or on Uniswap. There's Render ETH, Render Matic on Polygon. The same pools exist over on ETH mainnet. You can get exposure to Render on Solana. On Tau, you can wrap Tau and ETH, or wrap Tau USDC on mainnet. Ajax, there are some pools on BNB chain on PancakeSwap. And today we're going to talk about Near Protocol. So great opportunities for all of these Web3 AI projects. But it's not just about GameFi, it's not just about AI, it's also about decentralized physical infrastructure plays and storage. So, that's AR, Arweave, Filecoin, ICP, but the assets that we can more easily provide liquidity for are Akash, and one of the assets that I'm going to mention in today's report, Shadow Drive, which, by the way, launched their graphical user interface recently. And it is so cool to be able to upload files in a decentralized way using the Solana network and paying using your Shadow tokens. So cool. So cool. I think that if given a choice between using AWS, Amazon's web services for hosting, or Google's cloud, or Microsoft's Azure, between using one of these centralized platforms and Solana, a decentralized platform, or any of these other competitors, I think that most end users and businesses would choose the less expensive and decentralized option, which is being built right now by these platforms, these protocols. So many amazing opportunities. Let's dive right in. The first one is Naka Matic. So this is an oldie but a goodie. Colin, I think that you were in
Yeah.
this for for months, but this fits with the narrative that I'm talking about today.